What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? I just wanted to share some more thoughts in a bonus video about Chris Jones. We've talked about him all off season, and me having a background in computer science, I think very logically, if then, true, false. And so I want to try to approach this Chris Jones problem from a kind of an angle of completeness. And the first thing I want to talk about is one of two things can happen. Either Chris Jones plays his first game, that first game versus the Detroit Lions, or he doesn't. If he plays, well, that means the Chiefs worked out a contract. If he doesn't, he's still holding out. So, regarding holding out, there's a lot of things that pile onto this holdout lasagna with many different layers, and the more I've looked into it and the more I've researched, the more concerning it gets. So, early on, it's been kind of speculated that Chris Jones wants Aaron Donald money. And I thought that was a bit of a stretch. I don't think the Chiefs want to pay him Aaron Donald money. But if you go and you look at Chris Jones's agent, who is Michael Katz, the players that he is representing, Chris Jones is by far and away the most popular, the best player that he's representing. And in a lot of ways, Chris Jones's contract is going to be that agent's meal ticket of sorts. I think the next best player, or kind of the average player that he has, was Demarcus Robinson. So he has no other NFL star that he's working with. So Michael Katz right now, the agent for Chris Jones, and he wants to get Chris Jones a big deal. Chris Jones wants a big deal. And, that kind of adds another layer to this problem. So if Chris Jones doesn't play week 1 versus Detroit, how long is he willing to hold out? And if Chris Jones doesn't play games with the Chiefs and the Chiefs are winning, that hurts Chris Jones's chances of remaining in Kansas City. If the Chiefs are losing or the defense looks terrible, then the Chiefs are going to be incentivized to pay Chris Jones whatever it is that he wants within reason, and he may end up being the highest paid defensive player or defensive tackle in the NFL if the Chiefs start losing games because of the way their defensive line is playing without Chris Jones. So regarding, if they choose to pay him, I've seen reports that the cap is going to jump to some extraordinary number in 2024, 2025, 2026. And the reason people are thinking that the cap is going to jump is multifold. So you have things like the COVID time period being done. Everyone's back in the seats, butts are in the stadiums. People are showing up for games. But then the other big piece is legalized gambling in the United States. And that is bringing in a ton of revenue for the states that have legalized it. So good for Kansas to legalize it. Missouri needs to hurry up and follow suit and legalize sports betting. And, because of the additional income from sites like BetMGM, Caesars Sportsbook, that's going to help with the cap number in the future. So the online gambling, or the gambling in general for sports betting, is going to have an impact on the salary cap. So if the Chiefs were to take that into consideration, paying Chris Jones $32 million a year becomes a lot less painful. Chris Jones's cap hit at this point in time is about $28-29 million. So the Chiefs can actually reduce their cap by signing him to an extension this year. But, you have to wonder how much it is that Chris Jones is asking for. And Brett Veach seems to be kind of caught in between. He's hopeful that Chris Jones will be on the team for that game versus Detroit, but that's not a guarantee. So once again, if Chris Jones continues to hold out into the regular season, the Chiefs will either be winning games or they'll be losing games. And then depending on how they're losing those games, if it's the defensive line's fault, that gives Chris Jones a lot more bargaining power than if the Chiefs continue to win games. Now, if the Chiefs continue to win games and players like Keandre Coburn step up, Wharton has a good year, Noddy continues to do what he does, and another unknown player steps up for the Chiefs, an unexpected player steps up for the Chiefs, then all of a sudden, if the Chiefs start 6-0 and Chris Jones is still holding out and the defense is middle half of the league or top 15 in the league, then all of a sudden, Chris Jones really becomes a tradable player. And that is if the Chiefs don't want to pay him whatever it is that he's asking. So say Chris Jones is asking for $34 million a year. The Chiefs are saying, no way are we going to do that. It's more of an Aaron Donald's making. We think you're $28 million, and that $6 million is just too much of a difference. If the Chiefs go out and continue to win games, that kind of lowers Chris Jones's bargaining chip, and it makes him tradable. And so if the Chiefs, if we go through the pathway of the Chiefs aren't able to sign Chris Jones, they're winning games, defense plays well, and then they choose to trade Chris Jones, I could see them potentially getting a first-round pick in return for Chris Jones. At minimum, a second-round pick. Some teams might not want to bite the bullet because he'll only have, 8, 9 games left in the season by the time he's traded, and then they have to go through and get him to agree to a long-term contract to keep him. But I think, realistically speaking, a first-round pick wouldn't be a bad trade for Chris Jones for what he brings to the table. Now, Chris Jones' age, he's 29 years old, and I don't think Chris Jones is Reggie White. I think he's a great defensive tackle. I think he was the best defensive tackle in the NFL last year. I think he's one of the best defensive players in the NFL last year, and he should be one of the best defensive players in the NFL this year too. But he's also getting ready to hit 30, and we went through an exercise previously where we looked at a lot of players, and some defensive tackles kind of had a falling off in their careers around 30 years old, whereas others didn't. So the all-time greats didn't. Reggie White, he just seemed to continue to get better. And there were others that continued to get better than, other greats, they like Neil Smith. Once he hit 30, he didn't have another 10-sack season. And he only played until he was about 33, 34. So right now you have to ask yourself, if you're the Chiefs, you have Patrick Mahomes, this unbelievable offense. Andy Reid is the head coach. And do you want to risk 10% or more, 10 to 15% of your salary cap on a player who's going to be on the other side of 30? Do you want to do that to Patrick Mahomes? Do you think Chris Jones is worth that? And to me, as far as outcomes go, I think there are two really good outcomes that could happen for the Chiefs in this situation. One of the good outcomes is Chris Jones signs with the Chiefs. It's a manageable number, and he fills that contract and plays at a high level throughout the years of that contract. That's one of the best scenarios. Another scenario that I think is a best scenario is Chris Jones doesn't sign his contract with the Chiefs. He sits out. The Chiefs' defense plays very well without him. They continue to win games. They trade Chris Jones for a first-round pick, maybe to the Bears, and then they use that first-round pick to draft another player who ends up being a contributor for the Chiefs for many years to come. So those are the two good situations that can come from this. The worst-case scenarios, the Chiefs lose games in 2023 to start the year. Chris Jones gets signed to a long-term deal, and then he turns 30 years old and falls off the face of the earth. The Chiefs have 2 or 3 years at $35 million against the salary cap. It really hurts them. And so that's another worst case, or that's one of the worst case scenarios for the Chiefs. So overall, what do I think is going to happen? I have no idea. Probably, after I record this video, we're going to see that the news drops that Chris Jones signed his long-term deal. But trying to exhaust every possibility, if you had to ask me what do I think is the best outcome for the Chiefs in this entire scenario, I think the best outcome is if the Chiefs defense plays well without Chris Jones and they can trade him. And then that pick that they get turns into a solid player for the team for years to come. Now, granted, that is a very unlikely outcome. it's very unlikely to hit on a draft pick that as well as the team to be giving, a high round pick for Chris Jones. So many things have to happen right. So I would give that less than like a 3% chance of happening. But I think the most likely thing that's going to happen is the Chiefs defense is going to struggle early on in the year without Chris Jones. They're going to see how much they need him, and then they're going to pay him. So I think Chris Jones will be playing defense for the Chiefs at some point in time before those 8 games are up, before he sits out, the longest duration that he can. And I give that, probably 50% chance of happening. Then you have other options like the Chiefs defense plays well enough and they decide not to sign Chris Jones. They trade him, but then the player that he draft ends up being a bust or just a mediocre mid-level tier player. You have other options like the Chiefs sign Chris Jones and he fulfills his contract and plays very well. That's another option. They sign Chris Jones and he does not fulfill his contract. He plays very poorly and the Chiefs regret that decision. But that's really what's at risk here. What's at risk here is you have Patrick Mahomes. You have the most golden of opportunities. Don't screw it up. Don't screw it up by signing a player who is going to fail or cause your team to have a $30 million yoke around your salary cap. Do I think Chris Jones will fulfill a 4-year, 5-year contract in Kansas City and play at a high level worth his contract? I think that he will, but I am concerned because of what we've seen other players do in the past after they've turned 30 years old. So that's why this is such a hard deal. Brett Veach is stuck between a rock and a hard place. Does he want to put that much faith in Chris Jones? Does he want to pay him that much money? And does he want to take that risk? All the while knowing you cannot screw up this Patrick Mahomes situation. You have to get it right. And so there's so much pressure with Brett Veach and so many outcomes. What do I want to see happen as a Chiefs fan? I've become emotionally attached to Chris Jones. I think many of us have as Chiefs fans. I want to see the Chiefs sign him. I want to see him end his career in Kansas City. I want to see him play well, through a 4-year, 5-year contract up into his mid-30s. I want to see him to continue to be a dominant player. But what I want and what the world has to offer, aren't always in line with each other. But my question for you all the Chiefs fans out there, what do you want to see happen? Do you want to see Chris Jones play week 1 versus Detroit and, defense plays well? Are you happy with the Chiefs paying Chris Jones, Aaron Donald money? Say if the Chiefs start the season without Chris Jones and they play poorly on defense, are you happy with them giving into his demands and kind of being in losing some of their leverage over Chris Jones in this situation? Or would you be okay with the Chiefs if they traded Chris Jones? I know a lot of Chiefs fans are frustrated. They think Chris Jones is acting selfish right now. And, I won't get into that. I fully support players who want to maximize their contract. I can only speak for myself. I live a very simple life. I am happy with the simplicity of my life. I don't need a lot. And that's just speaking for myself. So I can't understand Chris Jones' situation, but I'm sure that other people would be able to. And I don't fault a man for trying to maximize what he can earn, especially whenever he might not be able to enjoy the later years of his life because of injuries or just bodily decay from playing in the NFL. But let me know in the comments, what do you want to see the Chiefs do? Are you happy with them paying him Aaron Donald money? Do you want the Chiefs to pay him less? Would you be happy if the Chiefs traded him? Are you frustrated with Chris Jones? Let me know where you stand on all those. How do you think the defense will play if Chris Jones isn't in the roster to start the season? Do you think the Chiefs are going to lose leverage because of the way their defense plays? And when I say lose leverage in terms of how much negotiation strength they have with Chris Jones' contract. So do you think the Chiefs lose leverage as the season starts? Do you think they gain leverage? Do you think the Chiefs can win with or without Chris Jones? It doesn't matter. They got Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, an awesome offensive line. Defense can have whoever they want out there just as long as they can get a stop every once in a great while. Let me know all that in the comments. As always, make sure you hit that like button. I think it's down over here somewhere. Yeah, whatever. and subscribe. We're trying to get to 30,000 subscribers, so anytime we can get closer to that, we really appreciate it. I also appreciate you for hanging out for this video, listening to my thoughts on Chris Jones. Tried to exhaust all possibilities, and this could go so many different ways. I think the most likely thing that's going to happen is the Chiefs defense is going to play a little questionably to start the season. The Chiefs are going to lose some leverage in that contract negotiating with Chris Jones. They're going to give in and pay him a little more than what they might have earlier wanted to. And then we'll see what happens after that regarding the rest of Chris Jones' career. But that's it. This is Gary, Gridiron Lines, signing out. It was good to chat with you here in this bonus video. I'm really looking forward to the regular season. Let's watch some real football. I watch the games with my old man, and we have a great time. So I'm looking forward to that, kind of that bonding time with my dad as the season goes on. But that's it. This is Gary signing out. Take it easy.
Thanks for watching this video from the team at RGR Football. Click these videos to see more and subscribe to RGR Football.